Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ray, and welcome to the RayWenderlich.com podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here are your hosts, Drew Freeman and Susanna Skyer-Gupta.
Thanks, Ray. This is the RayWenderlich.com podcast. Welcome to episode 7 for season 12. This episode was recorded on Wednesday, the 26th of January, 2022, for release on the 9th of February. This episode is sponsored by Community and Cooperation, and we mean that seriously. I'm your host, Drew Freeman, with my co-host, Susanna Skyer-Gupta.
Thanks, Drew. This episode, we'll talk with Paul Hudson, who is the productivity powerhouse behind Hacking with Swift. Paul has written over 20 books, put together so many free articles, courses, live coding sessions, conference talks. He's a proud member of the Swift and iOS development community, and we're so glad he's here.
Paul, it, as I have said, is an honor. Welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I try to keep up with your videos on top of everything else that I try to keep up on. I was actually watching your one that dropped today on the particles with Swift UI.
Yeah.
And Sophie's colored animation. Actually, I should start out by asking you, how is the family all through COVID and everything else that's going on? How is being locked down?
So last year, I've lost track now, 2019. Yeah, 2 years ago now. 2020, 20 years ago. The first major lockdown, the first variant that came out, where that was original variant. That's when it was all homeschooling, and that was quite stressful. 4 months at home with my kids. I love them very much, but they need to go to school at some point. So that was quite stressful, but now it's kind of back to normal, more or less now, as in they're at school every day. They wear masks, we wear masks and stuff, but it's at least a normal family life, and that's just nice to have.
And how old are the kids?
So my eldest Sophie is 11; she's about to turn 12, and my youngest is Lottie, and she's 8.
Oh. And so they're in the same
two
school
straws,
building.
2 dogs. No, they're in the same school, but there's 2 sites, which Sophie very much enjoys. She just turned into, I guess, grade 7, and that means they go to a high school. And that means there's now a gap between her and little sister, because it's not cool having a little sister around and giving her hugs at lunchtime and stuff. And so they have space, which she likes very much.
And you have 2 drop-offs?
Yeah, it's fractionally more work, but we have a little pep talks in the morning. I really enjoyed the Netflix She-Ra remake. And we play the theme song to that as we're arriving at the song. The We're Warriors song. That's the one. It's a great song. That's a little pep talk in the morning.
It was a really great redo of the series. It was very affirming on so many levels.
Yeah, they did so many things at the same time, all in the same show, which is very, very hard to do. Not only was it, of course, beautiful and faithful to the story, but things like they had a non-binary character in the show. And one of the tiny, tiny little wonderful things in there that even Hordak, who for non-She-Ra fans is the real baddie in the show, even Hordak uses the correct pronouns for the non-binary character. So even this evil bad person over here can still use the correct pronouns. So it's small things like that scattered through the whole show made it just a lot of fun to watch.
I have to watch this.
Do it. Forget the podcast. Go and watch She-Ra.
And then Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And now we'll have to put those in the show notes. So you have been remote for a while now, not just from the podcast, not just from the pandemic.
Yeah. So folks are all saying, how did you find working from home? And I'm like, well, I kind of work from home anyway. So it didn't really change life at all. Obviously, having kids around the house and doing homeschooling and stuff changed a lot, but it wasn't too hard for me. That doesn't mean it's perfect. I obviously don't travel. I don't go to conferences at all and haven't done for a while. And so I kind of miss that. I miss it a lot, in fact. And I know it's looking a bit shaky this year for Dub 22 being in person, but I'm hopeful. I'm still hopeful. Hope against hope that might happen, because I just miss my friends. I'm going to see them and hang out and chat about Swift and stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's that whole tier of I'm hopeful that they have it in person. I'm hopeful that I snag a ticket. I'm hopeful I can find people that I know there.
I'd be happy just to be in the vicinity. Just go and just go to San Jose and just hang out with my friends.
Do you go to
work in the Bay Area,
Do you go to
Alt-Conf or Layers, or honestly, just just going and chatting to folks at coffee and dinner and stuff.
Mhm.
It's a real buzz with or without a ticket. So I would go regardless.
I'm very glad that they've gone back to San Jose. A lot of people don't remember that it had been in San Jose decades ago.
Oh,
And
I
then they-
actually didn't realize that
And then they moved
I
to
thought
San
it was
Francisco.
in, okay, because I thought of it as being at Moscone and then moving to San Jose. So it was in San Jose originally.
It was in, well, I don't know if it was originally San Jose, but I know that it was in San Jose a few decades back before San Francisco. And that
Yeah.
was back when there was no lottery because, that was back when Apple was in its dark times.
Apple were calling people saying, please come to WWDC, please. It was a complete inversion.
I often joke that the swag one year was a clear Lucite backpack. We used to refer to it as Barbie Goes Software Developing. And it was hilarious because it was like, here's all your non-disclosure information and non-disclosure software in this clear backpack.
In this clear backpack.
Nice.
So
when do you think we'll know? Because we're mid-January now, and just talking about like the experience, like, oh, if I don't get a ticket to DubDub, I'll be at AltConf and I'll be at Layers. And, so which means we're presupposing then all three of them would be live. When would we know?
I think what'll happen is Apple will wait till the last possible minute before making a call. Because to them, it's irrelevant. The cost doesn't make a difference in any difference at all to money.
Yeah.
So they'll wait for the last minute. But the problem is that when they say yes, let's say March is looking good, they say yes in March, anything can happen in April, anything can happen in May.
Right.
So that sort of scare of, do you want 5,000 people to be very angry about their plane tickets being useless? So I think it's going to be a no this year, which is a real shame.
I keep saying that as much as I'm hoping that Omicron will have passed us on, I'm not necessarily disbelieving that Upsilon isn't waiting around the corner.
Right.
Yeah, there's whole stacks more Greek letters to come. No one wants to hear like Omega variant. That sounds terrifying, like a thriller novel or something, So
well, I hope they have.
Well, the whole thing has been like that.
I hope they have the Omega variant to say, yes, we think this is the last one.
The last final truly, I mean it this time, realsies for final 1 2. Doc.
So Paul, is hacking with Swift now basically the number one process in your life, or do you still have day engineering?
So none of it is my number one process in life. I've got family and kids to look after, and they're much as I love Swift, they're significantly more important in my life.
That's what I'm here.
It is my full-time job running Hacking with Swift. The site numbers have just gone through the roof over the last sort of 3 years. And that's great. I'm really glad to do it. I still have apps I maintain and work with. The ones that maybe the most money app-wise, I don't touch anymore. I haven't got time, quite frankly. There's other things to worry about. But they still sit on the App Store and still somehow make sales every month, despite not being changed in 5 years.
Okay, so I was actually looking that up because I used to be the product manager for a line of educational apps, and we made a Latin app that was nowhere near as good as your Latin app, and which is your Latin app is the definitive Latin app in the App Store. And I was wondering, so do you still maintain it, or is that what you're thinking of?
No, I literally, it doesn't even run on an iPhone 10 type device. It runs, but you get the sort of the black barring top and bottom. It's designed for the 7 was the last, I think, pre-10. So it has not been touched in 5 full years now. And it shipped, I don't know, 11 years ago originally, just for me. That's the way I think all good apps start. I've got this itch I want to scratch. That's all my problem. I want to read for folks listening. I'm a big classicist. Latin and Greek are a big thing for me.
So and this is a truly comprehensive app.
Yeah, right. I want to read Latin and Greek on the move. That's how it started out. And then turns out with 1.5 billion folks in the App Store, I am not a beautiful and unique snowflake. There are lots of other folks out there who also want to read Latin on the move. And it turned out a lot of actually American private schools, like Catholic schools, they want to teach their kids Latin, and they give them all iPads, and they just buy 100 at a time, buy 100 copies, and bang, it's done. So I made this app for me and made it 10 or 11 years ago, and it's paid for our mortgage ever since. It's done extraordinarily well. That was a real stroke of luck.
What is it like, the surprise to see an app that you just do for an itch go out there and then come back and say, no, look, I'm rewarding. What is the feeling like there?
I think it's very hard to judge, and this is true for everything I do, sadly. We spend our time staring at a screen or staring at a webcam, for me, a lot of the time, right? Talking away to a YouTube audience. And I can be on YouTube streaming stuff, and there's 500 folks watching, but I'm just in my room with my dogs and my webcam, and I've got no idea. There's no feeling of audience or community or anything when I'm doing it. It's quite hard to do sometimes. And the same is true of the App Store. You just kind of upload to this anonymous App Store Connect site, and magic happens, and a check gets written to you every month. And so I don't ever really think about the app's success. It has done very, very well. It is, as Susanna said, the standard for graduate or undergraduate university students, and many high schools use it. But it's just so abstract from my day-to-day job. I'm not touring universities giving lectures on the app, so it's all very abstract, and I just get a check from Apple every month, which is very nice.
So
that's wonderful.
Let's back you up to, were you a CS major undergraduate?
I was one of those really very tedious people who sort of decided at age 12 or something that they wanted to do computing. And then in the UK, we have our first major exams at 16. And then a second set at 18. This is what Harry Potter is based on, the owls and the other one. 16 and 18, then 21 is your degree. So it's 16 computing science, 18 computing science, 21 computing science. So just more and more laser focused on just doing complete computing science. And it was, I guess, helpful for me to do that. I didn't really pay attention during class. I skipped final exams at university, still passed with the flying colors, but skipped final exams. I just didn't really care. And then it took me 5-6 years to unpick that, to start to realize, hey, I've kind of like a blinkered horse, cut off all this wonderful, interesting, beautiful things in the world. I had to slowly widen my horizons and undo the laser focus. So yeah, it's a short version of your question. Yes, CS major, but then came to spend a lot of time unpicking that and undoing it. If that makes sense.
So did you come to iOS by way of Objective-C or by Swift?
Yes, so I did my first iOS app for iPhone OS 3.1. And I remember exactly because the very first app I made, I made a mistake with Xcode. I didn't really get Xcode at the time. I targeted iOS 3.1.2, right, precisely. And so it just came out 3.1.2, and folks didn't have it. And like, hey, install my app. And they couldn't. They had 3.1.1. I'm like, oh, what? This makes no sense. It was so annoying. Did not make that mistake again, that's for sure. But that was 2010, 9. I forgot when it was. It was quite a while ago. And it's been a bit of a rush since then of ideas and creation and stuff. But yeah, Objective-C.
And then obviously Apple came out with Swift, and everybody was sort of thrown back for a loop. Or was it not as much of a surprise for you?
Well, it was a surprise. I had no idea at the time what was coming. I didn't talk to anyone at Apple at all. I think most folks who had spent significant time with Objective-C, more than a year, eventually grew to love it, right? And whether that's Stockholm syndrome or genuine attraction to the language, I don't know. I mean, I was at the first Objective-C I wrote was vicious, like proper against the Geneva Convention level of Objective-C, because I was still writing it like I was writing C++. I was abusing it terribly. I got better over time, I should say. But I really liked it. I felt very comfortable in Objective-C, and of course, the language itself isn't really the power feature. It's the UI kit and the core graphics and the around it that give it real power. And so I felt at the time, I could just make sparks fly with UI kit or core image or whatever, and had a lot of fun with it. And I could build some wonderful, wonderful programs. We made a lot of money with that. And then when Swift happened, I jumped day one. I read the entire book on day one, start to finish, and started asking questions immediately, started using it immediately, and switched over immediately. I shipped my first app, again, not updated. Still in the App Store, I think, actually, that one. For iOS 8 was a first Swift release, or 7. was it supported, I think, but 8 was the first release that came out, I think, roughly. And that's still there today. It was a action extension for Safari to do view source. And it was very popular. And that's written in Swift.
I was just looking at that one.
Yeah, Swift 1. So that's really, really not going to build even fractionally anymore. And they wouldn't even migrate. You've got to install that Xcode 10 to migrate to Swift 2, then Swift 3, then Swift 4. Not going to happen.
And then, of course, Swift 3 came along and everybody had time converting.
Well, I remember very clearly advising folks. I was writing for Swift immediately. I launched Hacking with Swift the same year Swift was announced. And I said to folks, listen, if you are currently using Objective-C, if you are using UIKit and whatever, you can wait until Swift stabilizes. Because if they were really clear, Apple on stage, it's going to change. It's going to change a lot. We'll provide tools to convert it. They were really, really clear. And I said to folks, listen, you can wait. You can wait X years until it stabilizes to the point you can switch. I wouldn't recommend it. Because if you get on this ground floor now, you build the experience now, and yeah, things are going to change, but it's easier to move from, in that case, turned out Swift 1 to Swift 1.2 or 2 to 2.2 or whatever. Easy to move those little hops because it was originally Swift 1 and Swift 2 were very, very similar to Objective-C. The same long methods name, string by replacing substring, whatever, was exactly there in Swift. And so you could move across from UIKit to Swift very, very easily. And then when Swift 3 happened, and of course it's changed a lot even more since then, the cost of moving across to Swift grew significantly. And so I have no regrets about jumping ship to Swift immediately because it made my life way easier later on.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. And I think you've answered this in what you just said, but I'm not sure. So is that a general piece of advice you would say when there's a major new thing that comes out? Jump on it? Like read all the instructions that
No.
Spin up your business, absolutely drop your website and just go for it?
No. I do not endorse this message. No, so 2 things. Firstly, I am deeply pragmatic about my technology choices. Like people say, hey, Paul, is your website written in Swift? No. It's not written in Swift. It's written in PHP on MySQL, the most boring technology like imaginable, because it's designed to be stable and fast and efficient, and I don't want to care about it. Right, Vapor has changed every year since Vapor 1. It's changed to 2 and 3 and 4. You keep on changing and breaking and fixing. I don't want to think about that. I want to get the site up and publish my words and my videos. That's the job of the site. Boring. And so I have a lot of time for folks who don't want to choose interim technology. So no, don't switch just because it's going to switch. That's one side. The other side is that when Apple make a choice, they stick with it. I remember the MacBook Pro previous keyboard, right? It took them a few years to acknowledge maybe this isn't the optimal keyboard for our professional lab of Macs here. And so they stick with it. And then the Touch Bar most recently is another example. They go several years. So either they were going to launch Swift and really, really try very hard to make it work, ultimately making it work, or people would just move across to a different platform. They weren't going to do like a 6-month Swift. Oops, sorry, back to Objective-C again. That wasn't going to happen. As we learned, it became increasingly clear why Objective-C had been evolving so quickly, suddenly out of nowhere, 30 years of not a lot, quite frankly. Then suddenly, we've got blocks now. We've got all this fancy auto-releasing stuff and memory management for Swift. Arc. Why? And then, Swift was happening. And so they'd been moving towards Swift for a while. The investment was huge. And so it was never going to go away. It was an easy choice.
So of course, now I have to ask you this. Is Combine a permanent thing or is it a temporary thing in your general view? Because Combine came out very alongside Swift UI, but it came out separated. They showed you Combine UI. They showed you Combine examples, and they showed you Swift UI examples, and they didn't really bring those together initially. And then 2-3 years later, it's like, well, here's async await.
Yes, you're right. Apple had been working Combine for a long time. It wasn't like January of 2019, hey, let's make Combine. It was, I think, 7-8 years in the making, in various forms and various shapes. And it took them a long time to get something working they were happy with, and then ship the thing. And so there is no way it is going to be temporary. I would say yes, of course, many of the use cases have disappeared, but by far it's not all. And so some of the really powerful things you can do with Combine that are not beautiful. Combine's a bit horny in places, but difficult in places. But it's a bit it's still beautiful, I think, generally, the idea. Things like, networking. Try this thing, retry it 3 times, use debouncing, decode this thing, whatever, and replace the error with this. It is the kind of thing you'd do imperatively, and it would be a lot of work and not very pleasant, and you'd waste a lot of time doing it. And so Combine makes that kind of thing really, really easy, beautifully easy. Even with async await, Combine's still a better solution to say, retry 3 times, debounce it. Just doing that takes some thinking.
Interesting. Okay.
And so, yes, vast amounts of it have become less useful, if not redundant, with async await. But there's still a whole swathe of things that Combine's very, very good at.
So let's take that last step, and we've gone through, Objective-C, we've gone to Swift, talked a little bit about Combine, and then all of a sudden Swift UI comes out, and I was very privileged to be at WWDC that year when Combine and Swift UI were both announced. What was your initial gut reaction to Swift UI?
I think it's one of those things where you're trying to figure out very quickly what it is. I don't mean like specifically what APIs have announced or what's going to change or roadmap, whatever. I mean, literally, what have they announced? Because Apple have the reality distortion field. And you want to poke through that fairly quickly and say, okay, what do we actually have? And so you look at documentation, which on day one was suboptimal. something suboptimal. And you're like, okay, I still don't know what they've announced here. I can't see a lot going on. And so you download Xcode and you start poking around as fast as you can. Xcode 11 is just trying to figure out what it does and how it works and what its limits are. What I guess is the question. What does it do? What does it really do? And back then there were no collection views. You could make tables of stuff, and that was nice. And so it was, my initial reaction was literally, what can I do? What can I poke it again, get an idea of the sort of the boundaries in which I'm working, and then just having fun, because it still is a lot of fun. But in those early days, you're like, I can just make so many things in 4 lines of code, 5 lines of code. And it kind of brought back the sort of 17-year-old me poking around, joy kind of coding, having a lot of fun. And I still have that. Of course, SwiftUI is remarkable. Things like Refreshable and Searchable we had more recently. You can do wonderful things in a few lines of code. And I still love that. But those early days were like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. Oh, wow, that's clever. again. Backed up by, why is there no documentation?
Yeah, the documentation was a bit confusing. And I think I had just one too many pieces of avocado toast giving as examples of what you could do with it. I think that was the one thing that really was very difficult, was that they showed us the UI and how it could all be assembled. And then they said, and now there's a model that's attached to it that we've already taken care of, and we're not going to necessarily show you, but it'll talk to everything and it'll just work. And I'm like, but I need
classic WWDC.
I need that information.
Important code.swift in the navigators, that all the code's in there somewhere. Let's skip over that and focus on the bit that really works.
Right. Well, I guess the natural question here then is it ready for prime time? Is now the time? It does seem like now is the time where if you are new and want to learn iOS development, you learn Swift UI before you learn UIKit. But what if you actually want to program something? What do you write it in?
I want to disagree with your basic premise there, Susanna. Sorry.
Okay, go for it.
The best time to learn SwiftUI was 2 years ago. The second best time is now. Because, it's one of those things like with Swift and SwiftUI now, it was a genuine reset. And in fact, in some respects, a harder reset than the move from Objective-C to Swift, because I feel pretty sure now, having seen many, many hundreds of thousands of folks come to me on the site to look at Swift stuff, SwiftUI stuff, the transition from UIKit to SwiftUI is harder than someone coming from nothing to SwiftUI, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because they've got to
No, that
unlearn,
totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Where's my delegates? Where's my target action? How do I subclass my view? Well, you just don't do any of those things. None of this. No. That's what it's like, and it's hard. And I still get emails from folks saying, "How do I use the coordinator pattern in SwiftUI?" And I get it. We had a bunch of problems. We have to solve these problems in UIKit. How do we solve them? We do this. And then when they work, you want to sort of schlep them into SwiftUI and use them here. And that's not how this works. Not how any of this works. It's a whole different way of building software. And if you try and import all the good practices into this other thing, you'll have a bunch of bad practices. And so I think the best time to learn genuinely was 2 years ago, because it was a complete reset. Folks now say, I have 2.5 years of SwiftUI experience. And that counts towards you getting the next job you want to try and get. And make no mistake, folks, people are now hiring aggressively for SwiftUI because teams really, really want to use it. They're sick of writing. It's like in the early days of Swift, it was like, should we migrate to Swift or stick with Objective-C? And the team's like, could we please use Swift? Swift's cool. We're going to use Swift. And I remember managers saying things like, if you want to go to Swift, you can do it, but you've got to write a unit test for it. And that was their little bait. You could have Swift, but you got to write a unit test.
Yes.
And so it was a little sweetener that you could have Swift. And that worked really well. And so teams really want to use SwiftUI. They really want to use SwiftUI. It's a lot of fun. They can see that ship sort of sailing slowly, and they want to get on that boat while they can. And so it's moving very, very fast. And so many big companies, I can't say sadly because they email me personally, but I know massive, huge companies are all hiring SwiftUI now. Not all, sorry, they're aggressively hiring SwiftUI now.
My day job is a contractor for a Fortune 100 company, and I can tell you that everything is beginning to be done in SwiftUI at this point. And it's not the small indie companies; it is these large monolithic ships that are turning much faster on a dime than you would expect.
Yeah,
that's really good.
They value productivity, they value stability, they value testability. There's a lot of things that SwiftUI brings to the table about simplicity. They kind of want that. You could spend less time literally typing out vast amounts of UIKit code. Like I remember asking someone, "Hey, could you make me one of these new iPad sidebar style apps?
Mm-hmm.
With the new sidebar design." In UIKit, and I'll do it in SwiftUI. And in SwiftUI, it was 3 lines of code, and in UIKit, it was a lot of code because you can't use UI table view for that because UI table view does not support that. You've got to use UI collection view working in table view mode if you want the sidebar thing, obviously. And so just create this world of pain, and you've got to use the whole new UI collection view cell registration stuff. It's much, much harder these days to do very simple things in UIKit. And so you can hire a developer to spend 3 days doing that, plus get it right first time, or hey, it's kind of baked into SwiftUI. Oh, you're done. Let's do documentation. Let's do testing. Let's do localization. Let's do accessibility. Let's do all the other things you got to do as well as just making the UI work correctly.
So let's bounce back from the actual technologies and ask, where did the idea or the first seeds of hacking with Swift come from?
So I can tell you exactly. I probably got it in the corner somewhere down there. I used to work as a magazine editor, doing magazines, bizarrely Linux magazines. That was my area of specialty. And we used to run coding tutorials every month. That's why I joined the magazine. I used to write a PHP tutorial in 2001 or 2002 or something for them. And they had a position open. I took the position. I joined the company, wrote full-time for the magazine, and I ended up doing a lot of coding tutorials for them because it's just a lot of fun. And it was like, hey, let's try some Python, let's try some Ruby, let's try some whatever, just having fun with it, platforms and APIs and languages, just making stuff and having a lot of fun. I ended up running this we called them bookazines back then, but special one-off magazines that were thicker than average. And it was called Paul Hudson's Coding Academy. And it was 18 projects for C#, targeting SDL, the Simple Direct Media Layer. So simple 2D graphics using Mono on Linux plus C#. It's quite a specific niche area, but it was a lot of fun. And the idea was make an app, make a game, learn technique, make an app game, that learn technique. And it was very popular. People really enjoyed just coding stuff. And they said, oh yeah, I've kept the magazine, I'm keeping it summertime, my kids are off school, we're going to make these games together and have a lot of fun. And that was great. And so I really enjoyed that. And so pretty much thieved that idea. I'm going to make a bunch of projects and have fun making them and show you how to do things in practice, really put your ideas into practice. And that's the fundamental concept. It's evolved a lot since then. Folks often say, how do you plan hacking Swift? And I'm like, no. Let me stop you there. There's no plan. I have no strategy. I have no marketing. I'm just having a lot of fun building things with Swift and breaking things with Swift and fixing it again and breaking it again and fixing it again, and then writing about that and sharing my excitement. That's it. That's my entire business plan with Swift.
And I wanted to point this out because I've watched many of your videos and such, and I've likened you to Bob Ross, the oil painter, because you make things just naturally occur during these things. And I'm curious, just to peel away some of the veneer, how much scripting goes into this? Because it really feels like, well, we're just going to put a little class of this here, and we're going to put a little structure here, and then we're going to paint a little couple of happy trees over here.
Happy little clouds.
And then all of a sudden there's this program that's working just fine, except the difference is I don't have a big beige blotch of oil paint on a canvas. So how much pre-planning goes into these?
I obviously write a lot about Swift, and I make a lot of videos about Swift, and I talk about Swift a lot at conferences and so forth. I think about Swift a lot, but I write a lot of Swift code as well. I write vast.
Hello. We saw it about a half second before you did.
Earpods in. I hear nothing behind me. Hey, dogs. But I also write a lot of Swift. Right, I'm coding a vast amount of Swift, way more than I did when I was a full-time developer. Because you think about it, if you're on fun, sorry, these are my dogs. This one's Aria, this one's Luna, and they're quite good dogs when they want to be. When I was working as a full-time senior developer running a team of people, you write some code in a day, a little bit, maybe like change 3 or 4 lines of code. But you write lots of emails. You look at lots of Jira issues, spend time writing documentation and tests and going to meetings, going to one-to-ones and whatever. There's vast amounts of work in there that is not just writing code. When you're at university, like, 22, 23, fine, you get what's called a code monkey job. Sit down, code, right? But you get more senior, you don't do that anymore. You spend a lot of time not writing code. And so these days, I write way more code than I did when I was a full-time developer. And most of it never sees the light. I write some code and go, that sucks. Throw it away. Do it again. That still sucks. Throw it away. It's like the Monty Python castle in the Life of Brian, no, Holy Grail, where they build it, fall down, build it, fall down. Again. Eventually it stays up and I like it. And that's the first step. Write a bunch of code, try and solve a problem and say, that sucks, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. That one I like. Mm-hmm. Then I say, okay, I've got this thing that solved a problem and I like the code. Can I teach that? And the answer often is no, because this is like really obscure API or more interesting API. And in the end of it, I've done too much work, or it took 400 lines to get this button to work correctly, whatever. It's not fun and no one would really enjoy following that. So does it work? Can I teach it? So a lot of stuff gets written, a lot of stuff gets thrown away. And then the result is, yes, I happen to know the material at the back of my hand because I've gone through it so many times ahead of time, getting exactly right. And so it is all ultimately carefully scripted because I've got to make it, test it, ensure it's as best I can make it before it finally goes out.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, we have a lot of questions, I think, in this vein, because we too are content creators. So in your day, okay, do you have so this is the block in my day or the couple blocks in my week when I'm going to do that? And then other blocks in your week are for, I don't know, laying on thumbnails on your YouTube videos, or writing, actual writing, or responding to emails. Like, how do you manage your time to achieve this?
I wish I have zero time management skills. And this causes all sorts of problems in my life. And I apologize to the folks. This hurts directly. I laser focus on one thing at a time. And so other things get pushed to the side very quickly. So for example, I volunteer with the local university. I teach workshops and mentor degree on the students on their thesis. I am the chair of the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association at my kids' school. I volunteer there teaching the kids coding. And I'll be like, okay, today's a PTA day. I'm going to do PTA stuff today. I'll design a brochure. I'll send out requests, do the finances, do it all in one day, then stop and do something else, because I cannot jump around. I'm a terrible, terrible multitasker. And so I have to get it all out in one day, then pause it, then do something else. And so I get these huge backlogs of work. Like my inbox right now is very, very ugly, horrible place. I don't want to go near that, quite frankly. There'd be dragons. And that'll be like in Friday this week, I'll do an inbox day and try and read some emails for a while. And I'm sure it's deeply frustrating for folks who want to reply immediately, but I'm doing my best.
No, that was a good answer. That is time management. It's just that's what works for you, and clearly it's working.
It's not granular at all. The opposite of granular.
But we lose a lot in the context switching. So I think the context switching does not do anything good for us creatively. As creatives, I don't think that helps us.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing like a bit of a meme. Was it a cartoon? I can't remember, about some coder who's like got his headphones on, he's kind of hunched over his laptop thinking or whatever, and he's like, if this, then this, while this, and someone goes, oh, hey, have you seen the coffee machine or something or whatever question, and he goes, gone, and he can't get back to work again because it's kind of gone. And I mean, I get the idea behind it. I felt it's a little bit self-congratulatory, like most professions are like that. Like if you're a master woodworker, you get in the zone. You're a great woodworker. Someone goes, pop, where's the screwdriver? You're like, what? I think coders imagine we're some kind of legendary beasts who get deeply into our brains. What do you think mathematicians do? What do you think poets do? Everyone's got this kind of in the zone feeling to it.
I actually had this conversation with my spouse this afternoon, who's an artist, and I didn't realize I was walking in while she was doing some work on Procreate. And I was like, okay, everybody now has to be attentive. And when she's working on it, walk out, leave her alone.
And you've ruined it. You got to delete that one and start again.
So let's talk about some of the, I realize that conferences right now are not in existence, and hopefully they will be back again soon.
I was curious we talked a little bit about Dub and how we think probably we're not going to get live Dub, and we're probably not going to get live AltConf for layers this year again, just because of the risk of that. What about Hacking with Swift?
Live event?
Yeah.
I think
you did an online last year, right?
The last 2 years, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's not going to happen this year. And it's not because of online in person. I don't mind doing it online. The event is entirely focused on raising money for charity. That's what it is.
Right.
Every cent we make goes to charity. And we've raised $100,000 for a beautiful charity called Special Effect, and they custom build video game controllers for profoundly disabled children.
Oh, that's really cool.
If all you can move is your eyes, they will help you play a driving game. Or if you only have use of like 3 fingers, they'll help you play FIFA. And it just brings this, it's a really niche charity, but it brings this joy back to kids who've been dealt a really bad hand. And so they get to have this confidence and creativity and fun with their family and friends. And I remember the very first year it was in person, and I we had to play this 3-minute video of what special effects do. So I think, hey, folks, watch this video. And I go off stage, and I had really struggled to come back on stage because it's just so beautiful what they do. And so we raised money for them, and that matters to me. I work very, very hard to raise money for them, for Black Girls Code, for my kids' school, for the local homeless charity. That matters. I want to have an impact to the Swift community, but also beyond the community. However, the mental and emotional and literally physical impact it has on me is very, very high. And, running 3 or 4 days of 8-hour workshops live on YouTube is really taxing. And not just to me, keep in mind, I've got 2 kids. And so I'm not being dad for those days, plus all the days the prep it takes to make the material for those days. And my wife has to do extra work galore to make that add up. And so I desperately want to carry on raising as much as I can for charity. It really matters to me. But the literally physical problems I have, mental problems and emotional problems that gives me, I need a break. And so this year I'm taking a year off, almost certainly. And I hope it's a chance for the community to step up a little bit, because I've been to so many events around the world. I love them. I've got some lovely friends from events, but I've been to some where, it's $500 or whatever it's a ticket, and you go there and it's full of iOS developers who have their MacBook Pros and their iPhones and their iPads and Apple Watches, and then like, oh yeah, now we've rented a boat so you can go on a party boat in the evening. I'm like, well, you could have saved that $5,000 and given that to some charity where they're literally on the streets and they need somewhere to stay. These people here, don't get me wrong, I love iOS developers. I'm one of them. They've got a lot already. They're one of the richest echelons of developers already. Let's give them a little bit less and give it away to somebody else. And so I would love to see more events say, actually, this could be a not-for-profit year. Donate the whole thing to any cause, literally at all, just to help other people. So maybe me not doing an event this year gives other folks a chance to say, yeah, I'm going to run an event this year online, and it'll all be for
and do it for good. Yeah, I really wanted to talk to you about that, because I think that's it's sad that I feel like this is something unique about you, but it really is something I think of as part of who you are and your brand, is the coding for good, is the being very mindful of how we in the tech community, and specifically within the iOS developer community, can do things that are positive for society beyond going on a party boat, which is not an example of something we can do that's positive for society, although it sure does sound fun.
Years ago, we have this thing in the UK and parts of Europe, and I think some states in the US, where the term engineer is a protected word, like doctor. You can't, because of a doctor or a police officer or whatever, you can't say this because it's legally not allowed to say that, right? In the UK, there are some like that, and I'm a chartered engineer, which is a protected term for someone who's been classified as an engineer. Obviously, software is my area, but they do electrical, mechanical, chemical, and so forth as well. And it was a long process. You have to work X years and have X qualifications, and then write a long essay, get supporting evidence from other colleagues about the things you've done over the years. And they ask you a bunch of questions, then interview you in person. And in this massive long form, like thousands of words, they ask a bunch of questions, and never once do they say, hey, which architecture do you like using? Or, hey, do you tabs versus spaces, or MVC versus MVVM? They say things like, what have you done to mentor others? What have you done to promote the environment and environmental care? And a lot of folks would go, MVVM? that's not an answer. In fact, so as part of my subscription program, I have this. Everyone gets a free gift every year, and these are the samples for the year 2 gift. I can hold it to the camera so you can read it. It's a magnet, a fridge magnet, and it says you read that maybe
perfectly.
Yes.
Code is not the point. Stop arguing about MVVM and use your skills to build something amazing. And we can get so lost in this idea that, oh, yes, my architecture is significantly superior to your architecture, whatever you're using, which is what I'm using, mine's just better, right? That's not the point. We're not here to build and talk about architecture. We're here to change the world with the skills we have and build something amazing to transform lives whether that is helping someone catalog their amazing tiger collection, or play the guitar better, or some of the amazing fitness things that have happened with Apple Watch and similar. We can use our skills to transform the world. And I want to see more folks do that, to step up and understand what it means to use our skills wisely. And yes, that does mean very, very clearly we've got to help people outside of our very wealthy, very well-off Apple developer community.
That's
beautifully said. And I think we also have to be mindful to, even if you're newer or less skilled and you feel like, okay, I'm not going to come up with the most brilliant, helpful thing in my software, but I should also, like in my personal life, be donating money and donating time. And I think, you shared during this interview some great examples of that. I didn't know you were head of the PTA there, and I love that. So,
it's a wonderful thing. I walk into this room and there are 30 people, and I'm the only man.
Oh wow!
And that's obviously very interesting for a start, because our general area is the other way around. Well, not quite so extreme, but we make hilarious jokes about WWDC. Oh, the lines are so long for the men's toilets. That's because we suck, right? But it's the other way around, and so I've got to walk into this environment where I'm not looking like everyone else, but at the same time, I've got to be very mindful of the fact that I'm walking into a world that is not run by people like me currently. And so I've got to listen way more than I talk. These folks I'm talking to, they've been doing this for years and years and years. They want to give their advice, and I've got to listen to it and try and make a choice. And so it's very good to do that, I think.
Truly.
Wonderfully. Let's move back again. We talked about the fact that hacking with Swift is not your number one. Your family is your number one. I think that is very, very important. I want to talk about Paul, who is not at the keyboard. What is enjoyment for you beyond the fundraising, etc.? What do you do for fun with the family?
So I should say my kids do a lot of coding as well. So we love traveling. Obviously, everyone loves traveling. And thanks to the pandemic, we've rediscovered the joys of much more simple holidays. We've been to Wales last year, which is an hour's drive from my house. We went to Scotland the year before and just spent...
Which is gorgeous. Wales is so beautiful.
They're both wonderful places to visit. And, we'd planned for 2020. We planned to go to Disney World for like 3 weeks, then go to Toronto for 2 weeks and do stuff. And pandemic happened, none of that happened. And we went to Scotland. And don't get me wrong, Disney World is a lot of fun for kids. But when they kind of serve entertainment up to you, you just sort of sit like a passive consumer. When that's missing, you're like, hey kids, what should we do? You talk and plan and agree and have time together. And we had a fantastic, really beautiful time. So I'm very glad to have had that experience. I should say today is day 99 of the new 100 Days Swift UI program, which is free online learning resource, Swift UI videos and stuff. And so I've been working for 99 days every day to get to this point, and I'm very, very tired at this point. And so I've said to my wife, I don't know what's gonna happen this year. We're gonna go away on some big holidays, like old school. I don't care where. We're getting away from it all, middle of nowhere, for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. We've got to have a break because we've worked very, very hard for these last 99 days. Still one more to go. But anywhere else. So apart from traveling, you can see on my desk literally right now, I enjoy reading. This is a book I'm rereading right now, which is Bernard Evaristo, Girl, Woman, Other. I actually got this recommendation from Linda Dong, who had, at WWDC 2021, they would have, every presenter had a little thing on the table with their personality. So like, a little nodding dog or something, I don't know, whatever it was in the background, just showing who they were. Yeah. She had a stack of books. She was doing a talk on helping make a diverse app building environment, and she had a stack of books. I bought all the books she recommended, and I've been reading through them. And
that's so cool. So I'm looking forward to preparing the show notes from this episode.
Go and watch them just talk. It spurred me on to read a variety of other kinds of books. And it's really, again, about broadening my horizons. I'm like, when I was a teenager, I was like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings or Arthur C. Clarke, whatever, real sort of old school fiction. And reading these books, Bernadette Evaristo, of course, is a woman. I've just finished reading I Feel Bad About My Neck by Nora Ephron. I'm now reading The Case Histories by Kate Atkinson. There's a whole bunch of women authors. And it may sound obvious in retrospect, they write very differently from J.R.R. Tolkien, right? Tolkien, I have got the sword of power, right? In The Case Histories, the first 3 chapters, the author spent a long, long time telling you about this beautiful little 3-year-old girl who's so happy, so carefree, so go-lucky. Oh, and she's dead. Number 2, this marriage. Oh, and she's dead. And the third one, and now he's dead. Like, oh my goodness. They spent a long time crafting like emotional connection, and they're dead. Oh wow, I'm not made for this. I want the sword of power back. They want you kill
Bring
the orcs.
sword.
Exactly. simple fiction for a simple person like me. And so reading this kind of fiction has really forced me to challenge my brain and be more open to different kinds of writing. So it's been a very beneficial experience so far.
So I wanted to ask you actually about reading in particular. So I think in preparing for this podcast, I went to your website where I've gone before, but I hadn't like really delved into the stuff you've got under the about part. It's brilliant. Everybody should go to hackingwithswift.com and check this out. Great information all through it, not just the learning videos. But you had said specifically that we should be, your tips for success, one of them is we should be prepared to read. Okay. Because there's a lot that is just going to be in written form, and you can't get to where you want to be as a developer just by watching videos. So I'm curious, what do you read on a regular basis to keep up with Apple, with iOS, with dev, with tech? And if you're listening to or watching videos too, what's on your list of what you like to keep up with?
For folks who are watching the video version of this, there's a bit of clue in the video. I am wearing the hoodie of Swift News by my friend Sean Allen. Sean is again a prolific creator, prolific developer, a really just genuinely nice guy, super easy to get on with. And he just passed 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Congratulations, Sean. He's doing really well for himself.
Wow, right on, Sean.
We had Sean on we had Sean on the show a few seasons ago.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, sure. He's and honestly, he's so nice. I remember going out to see him in San Francisco when he was still there, and we just hung out for a whole day and just chatted and had a nice time. We get on really well. So anyway, there's number one. You want to watch Swift News on YouTube on Sean's channel. He does a great job of picking out things that interest him, editorializing that. But there are other ones too, other good newsletters, of course. Dave Verwer's iOS Dev Week,
right?
Fantastic. And increasingly, Antoine Fondelay, Twinnell on Twitter, he has a very good newsletter as well. I've just subscribed to another one, Natasha Fadiva at tanashita.com for your show notes. She just started doing her newsletter as well. So there are a bunch of great email newsletters out there that I rely on, plus of course Swift News. And I also buy a ton of books. I mean, I not only to support the Ross, I want to put everyone going. All of Daniel Steinberg's books. Daniel, he's a great teacher, a great friend. He's such a nice guy, so I buy all his stuff. I try and buy other authors and read what they're saying as well, to get ideas and get inspiration and just see what they're talking about, what interests them. And that's annoying because it used to be the case. You'd go to conferences and you'd go out there and you'd obviously spend a lot of time preparing your talk and delivering your talk, whatever. But you'd also just see 20 other amazing world-class speakers get up there and say, hey, here's this cool thing I found in Swift or Swift UI or whatever. And like, oh, that is cool. Wow. Inspiration. And then of course the best bit is the hallway track. You're walking around and someone go, hey, can I show you my code? Oh yeah, sure. Oh, that's very clever. I like that very much, or whatever. And you sort of bouncing ideas around, having a chat and so forth. And that was my favorite way to get ideas, was just chatting to people and sharing what made us excited and whatever. I remember one time dubbed up 2018, I think 2018. And I was just walking between sessions and I said, hey, Paul, can I ask you a question? And it was about machine learning. It must have been iOS 12. So yeah, it must have been 18. how do you do this thing in Coromel? I'm like, I have no idea. Let's have some coffee and find out. Like 3 hours later, oh yeah, we've nailed that thing fully. But just chatting and exploring and doing some live coding and having fun. That's how you get ideas. Sparks just kind of fly when you're in the zone. And I miss that. I really, really miss that element of information sharing. So it's a whole bunch of things. Sean stuff, Dave stuff, Twarnell stuff, Natasha's newsletter, buying books and reading them and going to events. There's a whole bunch of things at the same time.
Have you been doing online events? Have you been going to online events, speaking at them, attending them?
Yeah. So, it is I cannot tell you how important, how wonderful, how privileged it is to speak at events. There was one year I went to 12, 14 events, something, and gave talks, and each one was a new talk. I don't repeat talks. So I had to do 12, 14 talks from scratch and deliver them all. There was 4 in a month at one point because September's a busy month, as you know. It's a great privilege. I love doing it. Meeting people, hearing talks, and of course, visiting places as well is great. So I encourage them to try it. It's great fun. I love doing it. But when you're doing an online conference, the payoff, like the feel-good factor, mostly disappears. Because you spend a long time building a talk. I spent a lot of time building original talks, new ideas, and exactly animations or whatever, exactly right. And then I want to go on stage and deliver it and have people laugh at my jokes or whatever jokes, dad jokes, or have a round of applause at the end. I feel like I've done a good. That's the payoff for me. People said, "Yeah, I saw your talk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming here and doing it here." And I live for that. That's the biggest buzz I have in my life in my professional job. I remember I was in Bologna at Pragma conference. They're lovely people, great people. I recommend the conference. And I was washing my hands in the bathroom, and it is someone said, "Hey, Paul, I follow you on Twitter. It's so great to have you here." I'm like, in the bathroom? Like, but people really appreciate you taking the time to go and see them and talk to them and meet them and hear their ideas and their concerns. I love it. And the payoff for me, that the chance to interact with folks, a chance to deliver a talk and have a great time doing it, has gone. I know a lot of other folks are missing that as well. Mm-hmm. And so I do conference talks. I just finished one just a few days ago, IOSConf Singapore. I delivered one at NS Spain with my daughter. I did one at UIConf again with my daughter, Sophie. She does lots of UI.
That's really cool.
And I have the utmost respect for speakers who are still doing talks right now, because there's literally no payoff. We don't get paid a penny for doing them, giving up 2-3 weeks of time to build this great talk, give it over as a movie, and that's kind of the end of it. So we're just basically producing movies for someone. And we don't get paid a penny. We don't get any applause. We get to meet anybody. We get nothing from this. And so when I see folks who are previously doing lots of talks and now doing zero, I'm like, well, actually, we need you now more than ever, because these conferences are struggling too. These conferences, they really need to stay alive for when hopefully things go back to normal again in the future. Now is the time more than ever to be saying, listen, I know it's hard. I know there's no payoff. There's no fun. The meeting people, the applause, whatever you love about it, that's gone. But you've got to do your bit to help keep these conferences alive. Otherwise, they will not be here. And events like NS Spain or UIConf or IOSConf SG or Try Swift, they're wonderful community resources. And if someone like myself has some kind of position, like a platform to speak from, you've got to use it. Now, I'll be damned if I have this platform of sorts and I don't use it to make a difference. And I get some comedy, angry emails from folks. I dare to speak out about things like transphobia. Like, no, damn it, I've got 64,000 followers. I'm going to tell every one of them exactly what's wrong here, what's at stake here, and make it really clear to them. And so I will not be given whatever platform I have and waste it. So I am working to support events. I mention them in newsletters. I provide offers. I link my readers to them. I tweet about them. I make videos for them. I turn up, of course. Honestly, that's one of the things. Just turn up. Like just going along to iOS Dev Happy Hour once a month doesn't take anyone too much time, but it helps support them, helps drive that forward, helps raise them up and elevate up new voices. And it's a great event too. I love iOS Dev Happy Hour. I'll try and go that as much as I can.
That's all really great.
Do you find as I said at the top of the show, I geeked out when I had you coming in as a guest. Do you find that you have to put any level of permeable wall up to say, okay, now it's Paul time? Now I need to step back from this platform that I have.
So, random tangent, it doesn't in any way answer the question. It's January right now, and every year I spend a lot of time planning my April Fool's joke. And last year was Hacking with Swift ++. And the joke, I will, for X money, I will don a radiation suit and fly to your house to fix your code bugs. For more money, is Hacking with +++. I'll stay below your desk and do your full-time job for you. And at the end, it was like +++++. My dogs will come out with me, and they had a little radiation suit on with little goggles and stuff in the video. And it ended with this beep, kind of cut to Steve Wozniak saying, I don't know who this Paul Hudson guy is, but if he comes to my house again, I'm going to call the cops. And that was it. It took me a lot of time because I had folks like Miguel Diaz-Casa, I had Chris Latner, I had Sean Allen contribute things about how much they loved Hacking with Swift ++ in the video. It was a lot of effort to produce. And so I'm sitting here, and just this week I had a brilliant idea for an April Fool's joke, which I can't do, but it vaguely comes close to answering your question, which is why I mentioned it in the first place. You said, is there a wall between me and everything else? And I had this idea for an April Fool's joke. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. It's just too expensive. I thought I'd be sitting here because this sounds weird to say, but particularly how I've got to now try and say it. I do a lot of videos, and there are some words I really struggle to say. Accessibility. Yeah. And I did a whole 9-10 videos back to back of saying this word, and each one had it 50 times because all the modifiers have accessibility. Say it slowly in the modifier name. So I really struggled. And so I hate doing that. I hate saying the word. I get stressed out about it. It makes me very angry. I stutter worse and worse and worse. I can't say it. And so I thought this idea for an April Fool's joke where I sort of going, okay, and here we are building the text to you, such UI. And all we're going to do is add the access. We're going to add the access. Oh, for good girl, I give up. And it went, a ding ding sound, and then the thing behind me, this whole wall, becomes a green screen and then fades away, and there's a whole Hollywood set behind me. And someone goes, get Mr. Hudson a latte. And someone's pampering my face with makeup and stuff. It's just me, right? How can people go as a team? There's no team, it's just me. But it's a whole Hollywood set behind me of people producing the perfect hackers video. And so that's the wall behind me. It's obviously this big green screen with Hollywood stuff behind me. That's my permeable wall right there. So your actual question was, do I have a wall between me and the rest of my life?
No. What I'm asking is, because you are so well known and regarded, and you, as you mentioned, you have a day that you're going to try to deal with emails alone.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's at some point a wall you have to put up and say, okay, I'm stepping away from this, and I need that space. I need to be away from all of this.
So, like I said, this year, I've promised my wife, we have worked so hard because meeting 100 days is a lot of work, preparing, recording, editing. She's on childcare duty as basically a single parent. Not quite, I do a lot of work stuff, but mostly her for 100 days. That's intense, and it's really, really hard for her. And best of all, the entire course is completely free online. We don't make a penny from it. We're doing it for a community service. And so there's no obvious payoff. Hey, we can go to the Bahamas now. We've made it pretty clear we're going to go away once, if not twice this year, for as long as we possibly can. Get away from Swift, away from computers generally, and just have a nothing break. And our hope is, if it happens, to go to Iceland for a couple of weeks.
Ooh.
Time. We've been there before. It's beautiful, very peaceful. We've got a house in the middle of nowhere, and of course, it still has fiber internet because it's Iceland. There'll be no iPad, no Switch, whatever. Just books and burned Everest around me, just to have some space. And that's my goal. I would say a few times it's gotten a bit odd. Broadly speaking, all of us work in a very, very small pond, right? iOS development is one part of development, which is one part of computers, which is one part of mathematics, which is one part of, all sciences and maths and arts, whatever. So it's like a tiny, 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 tiny pond. And the one-man Hacking with Swift show is a medium-sized big fish or whatever in a very small pond. And so the chance of me running into someone randomly are fairly slim. It does happen. I after Dub 19, I think, I was really zonked. I was really, really tired. I'd written a whole book on SwiftUI less than 3 days after it was announced. It was Wednesday morning, 2 a.m. in the morning when it was shipped. So
that was so amazing.
Yeah, but it was vast amounts of coffee. I remember walking around the lobby with 2 cups of like venti lattes from Starbucks. There's Starbucks in the Hilton, and someone said, "Who's the other one for?" Like, no, they're both for me. I was really tired, and I'm like, okay. There you go. On Saturday, I'm like, let's go and meet his friend. He lived in Cupertino. I went to see him, and I didn't want to think about Swift. And we're sitting there having coffee in this lovely coffee bar outside, and someone walks by and says, "Are you Paul Hudson?" I mean, if it's going to happen, it'll be in Cupertino, right? And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm really tired of talking about Swift at this point, but by all means, let's talk about Swift some more." That wasn't ideal. So also, like the Apple stores, I know my neighbor went into the Apple store to get his phone repaired. I was chatting to someone saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about learning coding," and the Apple person says, "Yeah, I'm learning coding. I have this guy I learned from on video. He makes videos. He's got these pretty cool white dogs." Like, I live next to this guy. Did you give him your address? I hope you give him your address. So that's quite fun. And then it really backfired once. I was attending SwiftConf TO Toronto, and we're walking through one of the many sort of underground walking metro things they have to avoid the snow, because it's obviously very cold in Toronto. And I had my daughter with me. The two of us were on this daddy-daughter week away to explore the world. And I told her, "Listen, sometimes you can be a bit shy, but here, no one knows you. You can be whatever you want to be. You can invent a new personality for yourself. No one knows you, whatever you want to." And literally on the subway, someone said, "Hi, Paul." Like, no, that's really destroyed the point I was making to my child about how can be anybody here and no one will know you and stuff. And that totally backfired. So it's a really small pond, right? But it's surprising how often you meet people who are also in that same small pond. There's only a few million of us, but you will meet them sooner or later. And so, sorry, I still haven't answered your question. I'm kind of ranting a little bit about various tangents. It is important for me to put the keyboard away and walk away and not think about Swift.
But at the same time, you've said that, just because somebody walks up to you, you're not about to say, "Not now."
I wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't do that. That'd be mean. I always try and make time for folks. It matters. That's why I'm there in the first place. People. I got this great tip from Carolyn Nitz, who's at Netflix. She did Apple Maps, or did it with a team, obviously. And she's really nice. She's a really lovely woman. And we're talking at a conference. I saw her do this thing, a really brilliant technique where she's done a talk and she's free, and she basically just saunters around. She just walks around with no obvious goal. Like, her phone isn't out, she's not carrying anything, she just wanders around. "What are you doing this for?" And she said, "Well, I'm giving folks the chance to obviously ask me a question. Like, I'm not engaged with something else." And it made so much sense. When you were obviously free, people feel more comfortable to say, "Oh, can I ask you a quick question?" Because they're surprisingly shy mostly. I remember for the SwiftUI year, I had this t-shirt printed with Hacking with Swift in the front and then 2 straws in the back. I was wearing this every day. I had 5 colors, so it's obviously not the same t-shirt. I wouldn't, it would be a bit weird otherwise. I'd have like a red, green, blue, whatever. And people would still say, "Are you Paul Hudson?" I've got 2. What? I couldn't couldn't be any more obvious. A floating sign following me around with an arrow saying, yes, I'm Paul Hudson. People don't want to ask questions. They feel like they're disturbing you. And actually, they've paid $1,000 to be there for the right to ask you questions in person. I'm not being paid, but they've paid a lot of money to be there. I want to give them the best experience I can. And so when I am, I guess, in professional mode, as it were, yeah, I want to do as much as I can.
Tech things I want to bring up really quickly before we wrap up, because you get to pick that wonderful brain of yours. And one of the things
that I bug on line 48 of my code.
No. Actually, one of the things that I love doing on this show
is save that for email.
Is taking advantage of the beard I have and referring to myself often as the coding Santa Claus and going, okay, you've had your hands in Swift and Swift UI. If we've got Apple people listening, besides the ones that you may have the ears of now personally, what do you want to see in Swift UI in the coming year or two? What is some of the things missing that you have been craving?
That's a great question. So I've just literally one day away from finishing the new 100 Days Swift UI stuff. And before that, I did 100 Days of Swift. It was UIKit based. And I'd finished it in, I'll say May 2019. 100 days of work, all videos, UIKit. And I went to one of the Apple events at WWDC 19, my favorite Apple event at WWDC, which is called Core Sushi. It's written by
Sushi.
I love Core Sushi. It's great. I was a regular there. Anyway, Bill Bumgarner runs it. He's the guy who made Core Data, and there's stacks of Apple engineers there. And I met one of my friends who was at the time, I think, on TVOS, and said, hey, Caleb, how's it going? I've spent 100 days making UIKit videos. If I see something throwing away UIKit tomorrow, I will find where you live. And I was making a joke about stuff. I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any of that literally, It's changed a lot. And so the 100 days of Swift UI was 2019 Swift and Swift UI. And I've remade it all for 2021, now 2022 Swift and Swift UI. And it's almost unrecognizable. The number of changes they've made to the language alone, like removing self everywhere it's using a struct, or multiple trading closures, or CG float to double conversion and so forth. There are stacks and stacks and stacks of changes just made to the language. Never mind async await and all that jazz as well. A lot of stuff. And then, oh, by the way, stacks of Swift UI churn as well. And so it would be nice, not going to happen, it'd be nice to have a period of stability, but Swift is not slowing down. Swift's picking up speed. Swift 6 will have breaking changes in, which is a remarkable thing for Swift. And so I'm resigned to the fact that whatever I've just made will be out of date in about a year and a half. So that'll be fun for future Paul. That's a future Paul problem, fortunately. What I'd like to see, honestly, it's mostly quality of life things, because some things I get a lot of emails about, like, why, when I run this code, do I have stacks of errors? Like, it's not errors. It's just Apple's chatty logging they love doing. It's look like errors, but it's nothing to do with you. Leave it alone, ignore it, it'll go away, and then come back, and then go away, and then come back again. Different messages. Thanks, Apple. I'd love to see things like table separators be adjustable. I'd love to see alerts have text fields inside. Really small things that just make that extra little hurdle go away. Things you couldn't do, now you can. And there's still quite a few of those in Swift UI. But it's interesting because obviously it's a changing thing. Swift UI 1 was, here's our flag in the territory. Swift UI 2 was, huge changes there around, lazy grids and similar. 3 is slowing down a little bit. It's saying what haven't we covered yet, and adding those in, and really thinking carefully about it, because things like searchable, things like refreshable, they're like chef's kiss. I mean, UI search controller was a hidden part of UIKit, and searchable is like one modifier and a binding, and it'll do the rest for you. Well done. The team who thought that one through, they took their time. And that's, of course, where Swift UI has been different to itself. They weren't trying to do everything from day one. They said, okay, this little bit here, we'll do that little bit really, really well, and expand this little bit here. And So it's not like, we're doing all of Objective-C is now Swift, UIKit, core graphics, core image, it's all Swift. No. This is a little bit. And so it's given them more time to think. And so I hope they do more of that. If I had one request, it's just like someone watching this saying, I can make a small change to Xcode, like Swift really. They have this new thing, and it really winds me up. They don't want to deprecate code, like real deprecation. And they've made so many changes now to SwiftUI since 1.0, but all of it will not flag up warnings in Xcode. If you use all the old stuff, it'll go, no, it's fine. It's fine. And actually, they do this thing where they say, hash available, deprecated 100,000, iOS 100,000, whatever year that comes out. And it basically means it's going to go away. We don't know really when. Don't use it. Just either say iOS 15, don't use it, or give me a Swift option. Please warn me about deprecated 100,000 stuff. I don't sort of write that into new code. I want to know, just don't use this thing. It's going to go away. We've got better alternatives. So that's like my number one irk right now. Is just there's a lot of those. There's a lot of those right now.
Paul, I could probably keep going for the next hour, and I know that it's getting close to about 10:30 or 11 your time. It's really appreciated that you've come out at this hour to join us on the show. I am going to actually pause for a second and say, do you have anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think I've suitably, hopefully, shamed folks into doing some charity work. That's the most important thing to me, giving some contributions back to the rest of the world would be the important thing if I do anything else. No, honestly, I think I'm very happy. Thank you.
I really appreciate your time. I could not have done this episode without Susanna's help. The research that she does in between our episodes is completely beyond pale. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. And if folks take away only one thing, please make it be code is not the point. That's not why we're here, folks. To argue about tabs and space or MVC and BVM, that is not the point. The destination is not the journey, right? We're learning these things and discussing these things to try and do something. And it doesn't matter how small that thing is. Maybe the to-do list app you want to make will genuinely save thousands of hours of time. It doesn't matter. Whatever itch you have got, scratch it and help other folks solve the same problem. Use your skills to make a difference to the world. That's all that matters.
I know that feeling. I've got a countdown timer on my desktop for my personal itch project that I know I want to launch on a specific date, and I'm just working toward it. It's something deeply in my heart that I've been working on. And I always feel that the best software comes from those things inside that you want fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. Hence my Latin app, right? That's and I made a Greek one too. Trust me, I was doing the Greek translations to English. I had to go through, Aristophanes or whoever, and I had to go through Euclid or Euclid would say in English normally, the mathematician. And Greek to English, Attic Greek to English is usually quite hard anyway, but mathematical Attic Greek to English, really, that aged me. But it was my itch to scratch, and it's been very popular. So
right.
You're absolutely right. It's like what intersection of technology and the liberal arts, right? That makes our hearts sing. That's what Steve Jobs would say. And it's absolutely true. Find something you love. Surfing, cross-stitching, guitars. I don't really care what it is. Whatever you are passionate about, go out there and make it. And if you see that thing recently on Twitter, sorry, you want to end the episode and hear me chatting away. Someone made this like roadmap learning through apps, how to build iOS apps. And it was huge. It was called Data and Realm or whatever. And then Objective-C was here as well, and called Graphics and Information. And I kind of wanted to get like an eraser and go draw something through it and say, just make something you love, SwiftUI. At the end of it, it's probably a bit of fun. But yeah, something you love. Because that's kind of the key. Just get out there and something you love. Make something that changes the world for you or for your friends or your family or kids or whatever. Because there's 1.5 billion people out there with iPhones. That's a gigantic audience. 1% of percent is a good audience still. So, yeah.
I love that.
I get quite passionate sometimes about this.
Make something you love, change the world. And if there were better words to end this show on, I don't think there are. Paul, thank you again for being on the show. You can find Paul all over the place: videos, books, tutorials, 100 Days of Swift, 100 Days of Swift UI, Hacking with Swift, and of course on Twitter at 2straws, which is a question I never actually got to ask, but
too late now,
Too late now. We'll save that for the time that we get you back on the show. Susanna, you can find online at Suze Gupta, SUZGUPTA. I am Podcast Drew. In our next episode, we're going to bring on Jeff Rames and Leah Morel Sonnensheim, and they're going to talk about preparing for an iOS interview and things to know and ways to get through that experience. After that, we're going to bring Brian Capitz on the following episode. He'll bring us up to speed on what we should know about Flutter and how we can learn more. But in the meantime, that's going to wrap things up for this episode. I want to thank Paul for being on the show. I want to thank Susanna for helping me out. I am Podcast Drew for Drew Freeman. We send things back to the Emerald Castle. Ray, back to you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the RayWenderlich.com podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to leave a rating on iTunes. See you next time.